If we can make this linkage, this can become a very powerful tool. What it enables us to do is tell a story from our outcome all the way out to the future. A few key points from me in terms of like industry knowledge and best practice and all that type of stuff. The first thing I want to just talk about is there is a big difference, or we should be mindful that there is a difference between a roadmap and a plan. So roadmaps tend to give us an indicative idea of the direction and the way that we travel. And we also know that roadmaps should therefore be iterative, it should be flexible, and we know plans should be iterative as well. But then some of the key differences come down to the fact that roadmaps typically will have some sort of time horizon, as in certain things are happening sooner rather than later, but it doesn't always have dates. And in fact, it's generally best practice to avoid dates on roadmaps because dates are more in the plans, right? So lower level of detail. And this is particularly important because with roadmaps, how long is a piece of string, right? Like we don't know. And the idea is to articulate the why and the direction and not necessarily when. So think of it as like the why and the what, not necessarily like the when and the how type stuff, which is more the plans. And that's how you can start to make that delineation. The other thing to just be mindful of is different stakeholders, different levels of fidelity. Roadmaps can be external too. Probably won't have them here, but they can also be external. So those types of things play into it. And then the last dimension that ties into this, which is my second point that I want to share, is one of the reasons why we want to try and avoid dates with roadmaps, and this is one of the key things that makes roadmaps different than plans, can't speak, is that often, and we know this from like the cone of uncertainty, things in the near term, so like the stuff we're working on now, we have a higher degree of certainty, so you can think of this variance as certainty, versus the things in the future, we have a larger degree of uncertainty, right? So now next later is a very popular roadmap format. But what I'm trying to depict there is 3 time horizons and things get murkier. So in the now, it's not uncommon to be like, hey, we're going to work on these features. And it's okay to have solutions and features and functionalities inside a roadmap. The thing that we want to avoid is saying these features will go live on X date. That is up for detailed planning and the sprints and the teams to work out, not necessarily the roadmap. We want to depict direction. We're working on these features before we work on these features. But the interesting thing about roadmaps, and this is the bit that I want to really get into, is as you move further out in the time horizon, things become much more murky. How do I know what I'm going to be working on in 2 years' time? I can't really realistically know. Also, if we remember, we want teams to solve problems. We want to be focusing on outcomes, those types of things. As a result, as we move out, we start to shift away from features to these bigger opportunities. Here's some of the problem spaces we would like to stare into in the future after we've delivered these features. See, what we're doing here is we're staying agnostic of solution, which is quite important, especially if we want to have an empowered agile team, right? We don't want them to have 12 months worth of features and solutions to build, because that's not the purpose of an agile team. We might as well just move back to project land, and it's not where we're going to get the most bang for buck. Equally, when we start getting really far out, we might start to say, these are some of the outcomes we hope we might be achieving in the next 2 years or something. And we don't know what opportunities are going to pertain to those outcomes yet. And we don't know how we're going to solve them, but here's an idea of the direction that we're going in. Now I'll make this really tangible for you. Features, we all know, could be build X functionality, allow single sign-on, something like that. The opportunity could be something like, how do we expand our market share? Or maybe it's something like customers seem to have this type of problem. Maybe we should do something in that space. Another opportunity could be, how do we partner with another product or service? How do we get this into more hands or something like that, right? And then the later kind of outcomes that sit out here, these could be things like we would really like in 2 years' time or that type of horizon, we're talking far out, that we are really starting to think about taking this international. We'd be really cool if we had international customers, or maybe this was available in multiple languages. What languages, we don't know. But you can start to see how that paints a picture of the direction we hope to take the product and service in. We hope that, one day we're actually going global and international without saying build international feature X, right? So you can still depict the why and the what and the direction we want to go in without having to get into the nitty-gritty details of features. So that's a really important thing to think about, that things and the level of fidelity can change as we kind of go through those things. The last thing I want to touch on is ultimately all of this needs to be achieved in something, right? Some type of goal. And what we want to be doing is showing a way to link these items to those goals. And my point about having the goals later is like all these opportunities, everything linked to that goal. And then in the future, we might be thinking of a new goal and we will come up with new opportunities and new solutions to solve that in the future. But what it depicts is a clear connection between the things in our roadmap and our goals and our outcomes and our OKRs and how we're actually driving those things forward. And this is probably the most important thing for us to work out and get right as an organization. This whole outcome-orientated thinking doesn't work if we're still delivering solutions and we have no connection to the outcome. When we start to be able to have this connection to the outcome, it's when things become really powerful. And we start at the outcome and then build a product roadmap out from there until we no longer want to be focusing on that outcome anymore and we have new outcomes to focus on. That is how a roadmap really should be. And the final thing I might just leave you on this point around outcomes and linking it all together. Remember that product roadmaps is a communication tool, right? So we use roadmaps in order to communicate, to depict the direction and even communicate the directions to stakeholders. If we can make this linkage, this can become a very powerful tool. What it enables us to do is tell a story from our outcome all the way out to the future. We hope to achieve X outcome by delivering these features, and we want to stare into these opportunity spaces. Once we've completed X outcome, achieved it, we are thinking about some of these future outcomes, right? Story, narrative. You can go back the other way, right? In order to create space and opportunity to focus in these areas, we first need to solve these customer opportunities and problems and finish building these types of features so we can hit this goal, which is more important than the goals over there. So messy drawing, made it super messy, but hopefully you can see how that narrative works. And this becomes a super powerful tool as product owners and teams to be able to use as a narrative to, talk with our stakeholders about it. We should be able to reference this and point to it. And this should really be helping us build that narrative and build that storytelling tool. Like, you don't just become a great storyteller, you become a great storyteller by having these types of lattices and frameworks. I know I'm slightly getting off topic. Cool. That's all I wanted to talk about. That's all I wanted to share. Hopefully that's valuable. Hit me up if you have any questions. Keen to help in this space.